Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Not Content Podcast. My name is Jerome Cuson, joined as always by my colleague Brian. We are going to be continuing Greek Month by discussing 1963's Jason and the Argonauts, a movie that is well known for being a classic in the genre. As always, please leave a 4 or 5 star review on Apple and Spotify to get those algorithms going. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Click the bell icon for notifications. As mentioned, we are discussing Jason and the Argonauts, which is very well known as being a collaboration basically between Ray Harryhausen, who was honored with a Lifetime Achievement Award, partially a lot of because of this movie right here, and also because of Bernard Herrmann, who does the score for this movie and is generally regarded as one of the greatest composers of all time. So you have two legendary, individuals kind of at the peak of their powers. And then you've got the movie itself, which I think is kind of a mixed bag. But Brian, in terms of like fantasy storytelling and mythological storytelling, this is a very important movie because before this, I think a lot of these movies were either regarded as kind of B pictures or as not really important. But this is definitely something that was taken seriously and was definitely regarded, even at the time, as being something really important. And its importance has only grown in the last 60 years.
Absolutely. I guess the standard at this point would have been King Kong, and I think that that's kind of like the standard bearer from like the beginning of filmmaking in terms of like the height of special effects of what you can do from the start of filmmaking. So there was this standard set by King Kong, and Ray Harryhausen was actually like I think an assistant animator on that, I believe. I forget what the credits are, but he's associated with the original King Kong. So he's got that association with it. And 30 years later, 1963, audiences are not used to seeing special effects. I mean, they barely touched the surface. Like they did some Jack and the Beanstalk type stuff around this time. There was another Sinbad movie that was made by Ray Harryhausen's crew at the time. So like they were kind of testing the waters, but for a lot of reasons, this movie sticks out. I think it's because of the way they did the special effects. Specifically, I think the skeletons are the ones that stick out the most in terms of like the iconography of this movie. Because every time you bring up a movie or bring up this movie, I think the number one clip that goes to is the skeleton scene, and that's the end of the movie, but it's still spectacular. And in terms of like fantasy movies, a lot of the fantasy movies around this time, and I've watched a lot of them, especially the Ray Harryhausen ones. The scripts are never good. It's always about the characters and about the adventure, and if you can get down with that, and then once you get down with that, you get with the special effects and the monsters and the creatures and stuff. So it becomes kind of like a fun kind of watch by the end of it all. Now, this movie is very rewatchable, very much rewatchable. I can see why this is like Tom Hanks's favorite movie as a kid, and that's famous from that '92 Oscar speech that we actually reviewed a couple of years ago, which is really cool. So the timing of everything and the way that Ray Harryhausen commemorative achievement award came about, I just picked that random year because of Silence of the Lambs mainly, but that was a bonus. So now we kind of live up to that moment now and kind of talk about Jason and the Argonauts. But mainly, I think it's all about the effects. And this is from an era where everything was dubbed. So like we talked about that with the spaghetti westerns and how those were dubbed with different voice actors or whatever. So it makes it stand out when you don't have source audio on some actors and they have this different voice. It kind of makes it larger than life, and I think that adds to it. And I think we're missing some of that in movies. And I'm not talking about Madam Web, where they replaced that dude's voice in a terrible way. That that story about the villain they replaced his voice.
Yes, I
Not like
know.
that. Not like that. Not like that. But like this, where you got like a European actor with a poor American accent, and you just replace his American accent with an American, and that's all you got to do.
Yeah, I think that this movie, the standout moments are like the statue scene of Tolos. Like I think that scene is really well done for the time period. Again, we're talking within the context of it's 1963, and you don't really see a lot of these types of movies. What I appreciate about this movie though is that it's an hour and 43 minutes, so does it wear its welcome out. It feels very much of the mythology type. They're going on a journey. There's a lot of scenes on a boat, swords and sandals, fighting. And again, this is not my genre per se, but I certainly do respect the work that was put into it. And you mentioned the fact that two of the actors are dubbed. Todd Armstrong, who plays the titular character Jason, he is dubbed with a British dubbed by Tim Turner, who's uncredited. And look, I think that the issue is that he is not the most charismatic person in the world, and it just feels like there's a real disconnect between his character and kind of what's going on around him. I think that for me, the difference between something like this compared to what I think you're going to see in the 2026 Odyssey is that Matt Damon is the perfect lead for this type of movie, and Todd Armstrong, no disrespect, because his if you read about his career, it doesn't have a happy ending. It feels like if there's a better actor, then this is an even better movie. Like I think you really do need somebody really charismatic to make this movie totally work. And again, like it works because of the music and the special effects, but I think this movie deserved better because I don't think the lead was as good as he needed to be for this to be successful. Totally.
Yeah, I got the same feelings when I was thinking of like Streets of Fire. I had the same feelings about the lead actor in that one, Michael Parr. And I kind of was more forgiving then, but here it's fine for me because it's the style of acting from this era that I'm so used to. So his acting style kind of fits the era, even though it doesn't fit the time frame necessarily. Because I know, like, if you've seen Spartacus, all those other genre pieces, like from that time era of what they're trying to recreate, like they really nail it down. But this dude kind of stands out because of the accent and he's kind of clean cut, right? And he's a pretty boy, so he's not really like the gritty looking like Matt Damon, what we're gonna get out of his Odysseus. But I guess that's kind of the point because in the TV remake of Jason and the Argonauts in the '90s, which was kind of like a pseudo sequel to the Odyssey, which we'll talk about next week. Basically, they picked Jeremy London or just Jason London, one of the London twins, and it's again the pretty boy feel that they were going for, and that's kind of the vibe they want with Jason for Jason and the Argonauts because I guess that's what they wanted for the lead, and that's kind of what they got. And that's why the vibe you get is kind of this old school Hollywood mixed with the Greek kind of stuff. And I'm more in for the Greek stuff, honestly. And you mentioned the Talos scene, and that's where the giant bronze Titan statue comes alive and starts attacking Hercules and everyone else. And there's some fun scenes in that, and the way it's shot, it's just spectacular. And at first, what I like about that scene in particular is at first you think they get away, right? And then all of a sudden you see Talos just like go around the mountain and cuts a shortcut and cuts them off, grabs the boat. And mind you, this is 1963. Grabs the boat, shakes people off, and then drops the boat and then proceeds to walk and continue fighting. And it's like, how in the hell? You know what I mean? Like, wow. You know what I mean? Just
It
spectacular. And
looks way better than it probably should. Again, given the time period, I think it. Again, I think the Tolo scene is probably my second favorite. I mean, that skeleton scene, it literally happens like in the last 5 minutes, and it really like steals the show. But the Tolo scene is also really. I mean, it looks really cool. You feel the tactile nature of him actually being a statue. And look, I think we see some not great CGI, but I think the biggest difference between when you see bad CGI and you see like this, which does admittedly look sometimes pretty hokey, there's clearly people behind it. There's clearly effort being put forth to make this feel tangible and real, and that's why I think this is so much different, and that's why I will take fake looking real blood over CGI blood any day, or a fake looking mask over something that's CGI. I will always take the real over the not real any day of the week. And I kind of wish that we could go back to, if not this era, the Ray Harryhausen method of doing things, trying to make things more real. Because I think that's what people want. I think we've seen CGI, and we think we've seen the limits of CGI, and we see that they don't want to really pay the artists. So I would rather go back to, doing the more tangible thing.
right. And I think another like example of that is the Poseidon scene. Now, when I talked about this last week, it made it seem like a giant dude just stands out of the water and is like playing with toys for scale, right? Like the way I kind of described it. But if you watch this, it doesn't look like that at all. It looks like a fucking giant comes out of the water and interacting with the small people in the foreground and like just holding like the background together while the foreground has rocks going up and down the thing to make it seamless. So I was really impressed with that because at first, like, you would think that it would look so cheesy, like it's not a claymation, it's just a dude, and you're shooting him separately in the background because he's larger. It works. It strangely works, and I think it works because of the constant movement of the rocks and the constant cutting between the rocks falling. So
It's
it
a
just
very
seems like
good
this.
editing job.
Yeah,
The
yeah, and it's
editing
so
is good.
chaotic, but it fits and it works. And just little simple techniques like that. Like you don't need like CGI version of it. Just have a like literally just grow the like your person on camera. You know what I mean? Instead of like have a CGI giant version of them. So I thought that was really interesting. And of course, I think our one of our favorite things about Greek god scenes is like whenever the Greek gods interact with the mortals, right? And in this case, I think Hera's mainly the main contact. But when they take Jason to Olympus, man, like that scene is so like well thought out and like so imaginative because I guess like the gods are like what the size of Godzilla, and that's the comparison size. So like mortals are just like pieces on the chessboard to them, and
I
when they
mean,
go
I think
visit
you
the
see
gods,
that
they're
in
just
this
literally on the
movie.
table.
Yeah, I think in this movie it's very much that. I mean, in the Odyssey, the gods are kind of equal or the same size, I guess. Like, because when you see Athena in any versions of the Odyssey, she's about the same size. She's not Godzilla size, but in this movie, they're definitely going with that fantasy angle of okay, they're really huge, and Zeus being just a gluttonous asshole, can't forget that. You got old man Hercules as a part of this, and I mean, I think the gods being portrayed as aloof and not really caring about human beings and using them as pawns. I mean, that feels pretty accurate to me.
Totally spot on with the whole Greek mythology and the way that if you study Greek mythology, man, it's just about the gods getting off their rocks, right? And just coming down and fucking humans and doing whatever they want. But of course, in these family-esque versions, they're going to leave that stuff out. So I'm hoping Nolan brings up the fact that Zeus is a cheating bastard and he comes down as like sometimes as animals, sometimes as other humans, sometimes, like I mentioned, as the husband in disguise to sleep with the wives. So they cut all that stuff out and make him like this humble guy, right? And they kind of like that's what they kind of teased in like the Thor Love and Thunder, which I kind of tie together because it's like every time they cast a god or a Greek god, it's like we got to get this old school classic Hollywood actor for that role. It would fit so well, right? Because we want to fit that Jason of the Argonauts feel, the Clash of the Titans feel. Would they do that? So what do? Let's put Russell Crowe as fucking Zeus, and they think, oh, that's gonna work. Kind of worked, sort of. But you get the idea where this
Sort
comes
of.
from of like, sort of, sort of. I don't know. He had some funny moments throughout that poor performance. But you get this idea where this idea comes from. It's like, let's get old school Hollywood people, classic actors, put them in these high prestige roles as like Zeus, right? And then it kind of stands out. So that's what they were going for here, and it totally worked. And it works in Clash of the Titans as well. So these God scenes I really like. And I mentioned the plot. Now, basically this movie kind of does this thing where it stops and ends before they even finish the journey, all because the character Jason kind of turns into this misogynistic jerk halfway through, and the
Yeah, it's
screenwriters
a
are
really
like,
weird choice.
yeah, like we can't have that because everyone's gonna turn on him, so we're just gonna stop the movie right here and do this thing where like, oh, he brings the fleece back or whatever, and we don't even see like any resolution to the prophecy or any of that bullshit from the beginning. It basically goes out the window and just stops, and it just gives you the skeleton scene, which I guess is a great climax in itself, but
I mean, do you not get
thematically
the
it
impression that
sucks.
they were teasing a sequel of some sort? I don't know. Like, it's possible they
That's the
were.
vibe. See, I looked that up and they said no because they didn't want to bring up the fact that Jason was going to leave that woman behind that they introduced
That
at the
is,
end.
then why
And
do
it's,
that ending the way you did? I mean,
I know,
again, I think your
but I
audience
think they
is less
wanted
on.
to do this the main beats so they could do the special effects. Is my idea because I mean, there's a lot left on the table, obviously, of this tale, and the '90s
Yes.
TV version goes into that and tells the darker side after what happens with the skeletons and all that stuff, and the fleet's coming back, and him becoming some kind of king or something, clashing with Pelias or whatever, the king at the beginning. So it's always that kind of like self-fulfilling prophecy bullshit with the kings trying to kill off some dude who threatens the throne sometime down the line of the timeline. So you
Yeah,
know what
there's
I mean?
certainly a
It's
lot
always
of
that.
prophecy telling in these movies,
Then you
and
think about it, it's like no wonder Shakespeare gets all these ideas from Macbeth and Hamlet and shit like that. You know what I mean? Like it's very like connective
I mean, it's
tissue.
all connected.
The three witches, I think, are just like the same three witches in like every Greek thing, right? Like we saw that in Hercules. So there's got to be some connective tissue there for sure. And you
I
got to
mean, there's
credit
a
Greek
reason that
mythology
these
for that.
stories are told over and over again, and that we've had different versions of of Jason and the Argonauts or the
And modern day
Odyssey.
Titans are just Godzilla and Kong, you know what I'm saying? And they call them Titans. So, you know what I'm
Well, I
saying?
mean,
So,
and you've got Thor. I mean, a lot of your Supermans and your Batmans are extensions of that, if not
yeah,
out and
and we
out
gotta
ripoffs.
say, I must say, Old Man Hercules is quite the idea, man, because we always see him young, but this might be the only iteration where we see Old Man Hercules, and it's like, damn, this dude's got some tales what to tell, right? Like, and not only that, they give him survivor's guilt. Did you notice that?
They did, and I think it's a really interesting angle, and I'm surprised that nobody's tried to, especially given we're going to be talking about the return next week. We also, we have all these different iterations of different stories being told. I'm surprised we haven't gotten Old Man Hercules. Like we got the Rock movie Hercules, which was very bad, but that's not the same thing.
Yeah, because I mean, it looks like this guy, had a life, did the 13 trials or whatever, then decided years later to join Jason. But what happens is, I guess he befriends this younger guy that kind of like outdoes him in like some athletic stuff, and he's really impressed. He's like, "Oh shit, you're as good as me, even though you're smaller." And so they're fighting Talos, and what happens is the reason Talos wakes up, folks, is because they were not supposed to touch anything but food and water. And what do? They go for the gold. And that wakes up Talos and they get the fight going. But then when Talos dies, he falls on the guy. I think his name is Hylas. And Hercules is like, where the fuck is he, man? Like, where did he go? He's the only one missing. And then he's like, I gotta find him because like he's the reason. Like, if I don't find him and he's gone, like it's my fault. And all of a sudden, like, whoa, survivor's guilt out of nowhere. And then
Yeah,
this great subtext and nuance just goes away because the character goes away, man. But man, wow, like that's a story to tell. And I don't know if you could do like a Ray Harryhausen style to it because a lot of his earlier stuff has already happened, like the 13 trials. So I don't know, but if you give me a movie of Hercules looking for this guy that never or he realizes is dead at the end, like that's some deep shit.
the 2014 Hercules movie with The Rock made $244 million, which is unbelievable. It is also Brett Ratner's last theatrically released movie, and let's hope we can keep it that way.
I think that's also the movie that got postponed in production because The Rock ripped his guts open at WrestleMania and literally ripped his guts open, folks. If you
Yeah,
never knew that, which is crazy to think about, but
yeah.
um,
It was. I don't remember. I don't think I've ever seen the movie. I've heard not great
yeah, I mean,
things.
I think I rented it on Redbox and had it in the background and just thought nothing of it. So, but yeah, this is a fun watch. It's like a 6.5, a 7, because like I said, the plot is not that great, but
Yeah,
it's
I'm at
just
about a six
special
and a half out of.
effects, special
It's
effects, special effects, and I did have the Blu-ray at one point, and then I sold it once I realized it was triple the value from when I bought it used. Knowing me, that's what I do. But I'm waiting for like a 4K. I think there is a 4K. I'm not sure yet, but there has to be because the 2B version seems to be, I want to say the DVD version, if that makes sense. I know the Blu-ray was much better than when I had it years ago, but I'm waiting for a 4K because I think they can clean it up right and make it look good, and some of the graininess take away, but sharpen some of the other parts of it because I think it could do a really good 4K job on this, and it would really look
I think
spectacular.
so.
And yeah, especially the
Yeah,
skeleton scene would really stand out. I think more in 4K.
yeah.
So
I would agree with that. And yeah, I'm at about the same. I think this movie is clearly it deserves the reputation that it has, and I think it's so much a forerunner of the fantasy movies that we would see, all those years later. Things like, Lord of the Rings, of course, as well as what has eventually become Game of Thrones. So you could see that direct line, those direct connections, and I mean, obviously the Odyssey too. Like the Odyssey is born from those movies too. So next week we are going to be discussing the 1997 Odyssey that aired on NBC, and it has a couple very interesting cameos that we are going to talk about. And we may also probably, I think, we'll have at some point, maybe in 2 weeks, actually, we will have a conversation about the 2026 Odyssey, even if it's brief. But we will be discussing the 97 version, which is an interesting little capstone of the year that was
oh
1997.
yeah, that's for sure because this is an era where I guess TV producers were trying to lure in like screen stars, and we were getting a mix of that. So I told Jerome not to look up the cast before he watched it. He was surprised. I think he worked himself into a shoot in an off way. We'll talk about that in his weird prediction when he texted me before the scene actually happened. But yeah, it's a weird cast. But when you mix TV actors with movie actors, I kind of mentioned this in a text to Jerome, but like there can be this weird clash of styles, right? So be prepared for that because it's very much that. It's like a film director mixed doing a TV movie, and he's trying to mix these different types of actors with TV actors and movie screen actors. And I think this is the second movie we've only actually reviewed with Armand Asante. And yes, he's Italian from New York playing a Greek guy. Yeah, so it's going to be interesting because it's a weird cast, but it was a big success on TV apparently. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, this is an era. I think a lot of the broadcast channels used to make movies that would be not TV shows, but were a little bit elevated. And this is an era when you would get these movies that would air on like these two-parters on Sunday, Monday. I mean, this is very common. Even going back to the 80s and 90s, you would definitely have these kind of event movies that were basically really expensive TV
And
shows.
they're
And you don't
also
really
two
get that.
two parters. So like tune in tomorrow night for the conclusion of you know what I mean? Like that great line at
I
the end
mean,
of like a cliffhanger.
all of these types of things have moved to streaming now. I mean, if you get these kinds of miniseries, they're all on streaming now. The broadcast networks aren't really doing them. A lot of they don't even really make movies anymore. The broadcast channels themselves, NBC, ABC, Fox, and CBS, don't really make movies themselves. They, obviously they're all owned by giant corporate conglomerates that have studios. Fox being the exception at this point, but they're making movies that are meant for streaming or for theatrical, and you just don't. You're not going to get something like this unless it's on streaming. And the movies that are being made on television are being done typically by cable. I think of Lifetime is still making movies that are not very well regarded, but they're definitely making movies. And Hallmark, of course, around Christmas time and even in July, they're making a ton of that.
Yeah, I'll say this: Gulliver's Travel. I remember distinctly with Ted Danson. I think you remember it too. Maybe 96, 97 ish. And I remember watching both parts back to back. And I remember thinking like, man, like, this is so weird. Like it's a movie, but it's TV. And then of
It is
course,
a
years
weird, it
later,
is a weird feeling.
the feeling is gone now because it's not a thing anymore. So if anything, like if let's just say this, if the Odyssey was produced by Netflix today as like a TV 3 hour two-part or whatever thing, it would have a really damper look. I would say that. It would look just like every other Netflix show besides Stranger Things, but would have that kind of bland kind of look, is what I'm saying. So,
All right. So for Brian, I'm Jerome. Thank you so much for listening. We will talk to you again next week.